It should have been an easy win for Russia. One of its radar systems, which feeds data to an S-300V surface-to-air missile system, versus one of Ukraine's drones. The radar wouldn't fire on the drone itself, of course, but it was meant to be able to see the drone coming, allowing it to trigger its connected S-300 to fire at the Ukrainian weapon. What Russia would expect to be an easy, albeit small, victory ended up being a catastrophic failure. Ukraine's drone won. Now some of Russia's eyes in the Donetsk region have been ripped out of its head as one of Vladimir Putin's so-called invisible weapons has been obliterated. The news of the latest failure among many with Russia's radar systems broke on January 6th. That's when United 24 media reported that Ukraine had come out victorious in a battle that stacked a rare multi-million-dollar 9S32M1 radar system against a single drone in the embattled region of Donetsk. Ukraine's drone managed to bypass whatever detection methods the radar was supposed to have, ultimately leading to it scoring a direct hit on the 9S32M1 that appears to have left it functionally inoperable. With the loss of that radar, Russia has also lost what was supposed to be valuable eyes in the skies of a region that it's trying to snatch away from Ukraine. That's bad news for Putin. When Russia's radars are destroyed, Ukraine carves open safe aerial pathways through which it can send drones, missiles, and maybe even fighter jets and other aircraft. Confirmation of Ukraine's success came from Robert Magyar Brovdy, who leads the infamous brigade called Birds of Magyar. While the strike itself was carried out by Ukraine's 412th Nemesis unmanned systems unit, Brovdy played a key role in publicizing and contextualizing the attack. As one of Ukraine's most visible drone warfare figures, Brovdy shared the footage and analysis through his Telegram channels, where his commentary often accompanies some of the war's most significant drone strikes. Forbes has previously noted that the Birds of Magyar brand has come to symbolize Ukraine's rapid evolution in unmanned warfare, with Brovdy frequently acting as both battlefield analyst and propagator of frontline footage. January offered the perfect example of why these drone units have become so important, and Brovdy's comments highlight just how badly Russia's radar system failed at protecting itself against the very type of threat it was designed to counter. Taking to Telegram, the drone expert said, "The worm radar of the S-300V air defense system was buried in the Donetsk region on January 5, 2026. Brovdy went on to explain that the radar destroyed in the strike dated back to the Soviet era but was still expensive, powerful, and extremely difficult for Russia to replace. As is his way, Brovdy also shared a video chronicling Ukraine's latest success. In that video, we see footage that appears to have been shot by the attacking drone itself. Brovdy described it as a medium-range strike drone, though he did not specify the exact make or model. Ukraine fields several drones in this category designed to strike targets in occupied territory behind the front lines. These drones can fly significantly farther than short-range first-person view or FPV drones while still transmitting high-quality strike footage. At the same time, they do not have the extreme range of the systems Ukraine uses to hit targets deep inside Russia. As the name implies, they fill a crucial middle ground, allowing Ukrainian forces to hit headquarters, troop concentrations, logistics hubs, and air defense systems inside occupied Ukraine. And that's just what it did on January 5th. Returning to the footage, the 21-second video highlights just how exposed the Russian system was. The drone approaches in a straight line, without any visible air defense response, before striking what appears to be the 9S32M1 radar module of an S-300V system. If that identification is correct, the radar and the air defense battery it supported would have been rendered inoperable. Euromaidan Press explains more in its breakdown of the strike, citing reporting from Militani. The shared footage evidence suggests that the drone directly struck the radar's antenna module, the outlet notes. This would almost certainly disable the entire system. While the extent of the internal damage and casualties remains unclear due to the limited information about the drone's warhead, Militani added that the strike may also have damaged the radar's chassis and potentially injured its crew. However, the outlet cautioned that damage beyond what is visible in the video cannot be confirmed. Even if no Russian soldiers died in Ukraine's latest Donetsk drone strike, the Birds of Magyar have just achieved a massive success. With this radar out of the picture, further strikes, perhaps against Russian soldiers in Donetsk, have likely been made possible. What January 5th lacked in Russian casualties may soon be made up for in casualties to come, all due to a rare radar station being taken out. How? Well, to answer that question, we need to take a closer look at both the radar that Ukraine destroyed and the air defense unit to which it provided data. The 9S32M1 is a very rare radar, making details about its capabilities somewhat scant. However, Militani shared some information about what makes this radar so important to Russia, starting with the fact that it is a 3-coordinate and multi-channel radar system designed to guide air defense missiles to their intended targets. The idea is that the radar picks up on an incoming threat, such as a missile, drone, or aircraft, and it triggers its attached air defense platform to fire against this threat. In the case of the 9S-32M1 in Donetsk, that platform was an S-300V, which is another of Russia's older pieces of equipment. Accuracy is supposed to be a hallmark of this particular radar, Militani says. The system is equipped with a coherent pulse radar operating in the centimeter range of electromagnetic waves, the outlet reports. According to Science Direct, a coherent radar is a system capable of preserving the phase history of its targets, which aids in the extraction of Doppler frequency information used to keep a bead on the target. In other words, the 9S-32M1's coherent pulse radar should make it incredibly difficult for a target to escape its sights once that target has been located. The radar is also supposed to be capable of picking up on incoming targets very quickly. It uses a phased array antenna, which offers electronic beam scanning without the need to mechanically rotate the antenna itself. Less mechanical work leads to faster target detection, which enhances the survivability of both the radar and whatever its associated air defense system is meant to be guarding. The radar also controls both the launchers and the charges of the air defense platform that receives its data. Up to 12 anti-aircraft missiles can be guided by the 9S-32M1, Militani says, and these 12 missiles can be used to strike up to 6 targets simultaneously. As for range, we don't know much beyond the 9S-32M1 supposedly being able to detect fighter jet-like objects up to 150 kilometers or about 93 miles away. But even then, that declared detection range is only relevant when the incoming target is flying at an altitude of at least 5 kilometers or 3.1 miles. Not that any of this meant anything on January 5th. Such a supposedly impressive system failed to realize that one of Ukraine's drones was bearing down. Russia ended up paying the multi-million-dollar price. Perhaps the 9S-32M1 isn't as effective against drones as Russia needs it to be. After all, Ukraine's drones don't fly at multi-mile high altitudes. They hug the ground as tightly as possible, as we saw in Brovdy's video. Russia's 9S-32M1 may well be effective when dealing with missiles and aircraft. However, Ukraine just proved that it's useless when faced with a drone. Maybe that's the real reason that the 9S-32M1 is so rare. Russia may want Ukraine to think that this radar system is rarely used because of how powerful it is, but really it may have no answer for Ukraine's drones, especially not the middle-range drones that are now flying in occupied Donetsk. One thing we do know is that this seems to only be the second instance of Ukraine taking out a 9S-32M1 during almost 4 years of war with Russia. The birds of Magyar have shown that this low destruction rate is likely more to do with Russia not deploying what it knows is an outdated and expensive radar than it has to do with that radar being in any way effective. But let's assume for a moment that the 9S-32M1 is everything that Russia claims it to be. A radar powerful and fast enough to detect almost anything, which should guarantee an air defense response whenever missiles and aircraft come calling. Were that the case, the destruction of the 9S-32M1 in Donetsk is important because it's not just the radar itself that's been taken out of commission. Without what amounts to its eyes, the S-300V that relied on the crippled 9S-32M1 has effectively been taken out of commission without Ukraine having to land a single blow against the platform. That's big because despite its age, the S-300V can still be a very effective air defense system, especially against many of the older airframes that Ukraine is able to deploy in Donetsk. That's confirmed by Army recognition, which highlights some of the system's specifications. It says that the S-300V, which has the NATO code name of SA-12 Gladiator Giant, is mobile and capable of unleashing a horde of missiles against incoming targets. There are 4 variants of the air defense platform, and it's unclear which one Ukraine took out of commission with its Donetsk radar strike. The latter versions improved the S-300V's radar, target acquisition, missile range, and general functionality. But even if it was the base version of the platform that was deployed in Donetsk, the loss of the 9S-32M1 means that Russia no longer has a system that typically comes with 4 missile launchers, each of which can prepare to fire within 15 seconds of receiving targeting information. That's a quick turnaround from data to destruction, and it's that sort of speed that, when the S-300 is paired with a radar like the 9S-32M1, makes occupied Donetsk skies dangerous for Ukraine's fighter jets and other aircraft. Odin offers a smattering of extra details, noting that the S-300V is respected enough to have been purchased by several countries. These nations include China, Iran, Syria, Egypt, Bulgaria, and even Ukraine itself, though it's likely that the latter has S-300s left behind from when it was part of the Soviet Union. The outlet adds that the system is crewed by 3 people and that it can be emplaced in just 5 minutes and displaced just as quickly. Odin also says that the S-300V can be loaded with 9 M82 SA-12B giant missiles, which carry high explosive fragmentation warheads and can reach a maximum speed of Mach 8. That would make some of the S-300V's missiles potentially hypersonic, and nothing that Ukraine can deploy is capable of outpacing the 9 M82 SA-12B giant. Of course, none of these capabilities matter when the S-300V can't see incoming threats, and Ukraine just blinded at least one of these air defense platforms in Donetsk. That brings us to what the Birds of Magyar's latest Donetsk success story means in the wider context of the war. As a standalone strike, the destruction of a 9S-32M1 radar is fairly minor. Important from the perspective of taking out the attached S-300, sure, but hardly a game-changing event for Ukraine. However, Russia's big problem is that the January 5th strike isn't just some one-off that saw Ukraine get lucky when it took out an air defense platform. It's one of many successful strikes that Ukraine has conducted since February 2022, meaning it contributes to a growing air defense problem for which Putin has no solution. The air defense platform losses alone should concern Putin. According to Ukraine's Ministry of Finance, Russia has lost 1,269 of its anti-aircraft platform in a little under 4 years. That's not quite one per day, but it's pretty close. With each of these losses, Russia is forced into making difficult choices. Does it send more air defense systems from Russia into Ukraine? If it does, then those defenses can't guard the types of vital assets that Ukraine has been hitting with its long-range drones, such as oil refineries. Or does Russia accept the loss and leave the portion of occupied Ukraine that its air defense system guarded unprotected? That's hardly a great situation either, as the lack of protection creates a vulnerability that Ukraine can exploit to target the Russian rear. Either way, Ukraine wins. Russia's air defense problems extend beyond the sheer number of platforms and radars that it's lost. Supply chain issues are also causing problems, both in terms of missile manufacturing and the building of new systems to replace those that Ukraine is taking out of the game. In September, Dr. Jack Watling of the Royal United Services Institute said that Russia is facing a looming air defense missile shortage that is due to come to a head in February 2026. This shortage will provide a window of opportunity for Ukraine, Watling says, before adding that Ukraine will be able to exploit Russia's shortages and weaknesses to hit a growing number of targets and put pressure on Russian industry. We've already seen Ukraine spend much of 2025 doing just that inside Russia, and it's looking like 2026 will see a Russian missile shortage that allows Ukraine's long-range assaults to be even more devastating. The impact of this shortage will also impact occupied Ukraine in much the same way, opening up the windows of opportunity that Watling mentions, and perhaps offering Ukraine some chances to reclaim territory along the way. Compounding these missile problems is Russia's inability to build anywhere near as many replacements for its destroyed air defenses as it needs. The Kyiv Post reported on this problem in December, in an article where it revealed that the construction of Russia's S-400 air defense platform is reliant on components that come from many different places, including Central Asia and the United States. The S-400 is Russia's S-300 upgrade, and it's meant to be even more capable than the platform that Ukraine just took offline with its radar strike. Again, it's RUSI's Jack Watling with the details. In its report, the think tank says that stronger enforcement of existing sanctions, along with the introduction of new sanctions, could choke off the supply chain that Russia needs to keep open if it wants to build more S-400s. There is a need to expand enforcement and strengthen cooperation on enforcement. Watling states before adding, "It's all very well passing a sanction, but if we still see fairly obvious circumvention getting through, it suggests that countries are not being vigilant enough in making sure that sanctions are respected." These production issues combine with Russia's heavy air defense losses to create gaps. George Barros of the Institute for the Study of War, or ISW, says that there now exist plenty of opportunities for Ukraine to hit Russia hard. Once you get past that initial shell around the theater in Ukraine, the rest of Russia has holes and vulnerabilities, Barros says. All that Ukraine needs are the right weapons and knowledge of where the gaps are. Or it could do what it's just done in Donetsk, create a gap that Ukraine is almost certain to exploit in future attacks against Russian positions in the occupied portions of the Donetsk Oblast. That's bad news for Putin, as he has been putting pressure on Ukraine to cede Donetsk as part of the ongoing peace negotiations. If Putin is to be believed, Ukraine is on the verge of losing the territory that it still holds in Donetsk. As is so often the case, the reality is far different from the version of events that Putin creates. United 24 Media points out that Russia has already spent 11 years trying to capture Donetsk as of November 2025. Starting with Putin's initial campaign of aggression, that led to the annexation of Crimea. Almost 4 years of fighting have left around 30% of Donetsk still to capture, though this territory is home to the fortress belt of well-defended cities and settlements that promise to make any attempts at future advances painful for Russia. There is no quick victory in Donetsk coming for Putin. In December, analysts with the ISW suggested that Russia is unlikely to topple the fortress belt until 2027 or 28, assuming the same volume of Russian assaults and that Ukraine's partners continue to offer their support. In that context, Ukraine's scoring blows against Russia in the parts of Donetsk that its forces do occupy is terrible for Putin. He wants to create a narrative around the inevitable collapse of Ukraine's Donetsk defenses. That's pretty hard to do when Ukraine's drones are destroying valuable radars. 2026 is unlikely to look the way that Putin claims that it will. While Russia will likely continue trying to make the slow and steady advances that we've seen over the past few years, it will be trying to do so at a time when Ukraine has middle-range drones. It's these types of drones that just destroyed some of Russia's air defense eyes, and if Ukraine keeps building and using them as effectively as it did on January 5th, the command posts, logistical arteries, and troop locations upon which Russia is relying to keep its Donetsk offensive ticking are all under threat. The loss of one 9S-32M1 won't stop Russia's attacks in Donetsk. However, it may serve as an early warning to Putin's troops that Ukraine's middle-range drones are ready to take out more radars, more air defenses, and once enough safe aerial passages have been cleared, those drones, along with Ukraine's other aerial forces, may start turning the tide in Donetsk. But hey, at least Putin can celebrate the death of the leader of a Russian partisan group that has been fighting against him in Ukraine. At least, that's what Putin thought. After Russia paid out $500,000 as a bounty on the supposedly dead military leader, Ukraine revealed that it faked the whole thing and got Russia to pay it for the privilege. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more coverage of the latest happenings in Donetsk. And thank you for watching.